Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Whatever your time zone, welcome. This is Digital Transformation Talk, and I am your host, Kevin Crane. Welcome to the show. Today, we will be discussing the topic of using AI to help process automation reach peak efficiency. This is an important topic because in recent years, AI has emerged as a game changer in process automation and process improvement, offering advanced capabilities to stream workflows and enhance decision-making and drive productivity to unprecedented levels. By harnessing process automation, organizations can improve their operations in ways that were simply not possible only a few years ago. AI-driven automation can reduce errors and enhance accuracy, accelerate task completion times, and enable adaptive and self-learning systems that continuously improve performance. This is all great, but using AI to optimize process automation comes with its share of challenges that we must navigate, starting with data quality and availability, which we'll talk more about today. AI algorithms rely heavily on high quality data, and ensuring data accuracy, completeness, and relevance can be challenging, especially when dealing with legacy systems or disparate data sources. Integrating AI-powered automation tools with existing systems and workflows can be complex as well. Compatibility issues, data synchronization, and system interoperability must be addressed to ensure a seamless integration. AI models may exhibit bias also based on the data that they're trained on, and this can lead to skewed results and unfair decision-making if not carefully monitored and mitigated. There are a number of other factors to consider as well. Change management. Implementing AI process automation often requires significant changes to our key processes. Scalability and maintenance challenges arise when scaling AI solutions to handle large volumes of data or increased complexity. And of course, this all costs. Investing in AI technologies and infrastructure is costly, and organizations must carefully weigh the benefits against the expense to ensure a return on investment. Now, addressing these challenges requires a strategic approach and collaboration across teams, continuous learning, and a commitment to ethical AI practices. But how do you do it? Well, that's what we're here today to talk with a great panel of guests. But before I introduce our guests, as always, I do want to say that we want to hear from you too. We'd like to encourage everyone attending today to participate. So please join in with your comments in the chat section. And if you have a question along the way, jump on in. I will attempt to get some of your questions and comments into the flow of the show today. And we'll have a few minutes also at the end for your questions. All right, let's bring aboard our panel of guests today, starting with Ayman Hussein. Ayman is a customer engineering leader at Google. Ayman, welcome aboard. Where are you calling in from?
Hey, good to be here. I'm calling in from Houston, Texas, in the U.S.
Houston, Texas. All right, very good. Well, thank you, Ayman, for being with us. I appreciate you being with us today. Also today, we have Max Vermeer, Senior Director of AI Strategy at Abby. Max, are you with us?
Absolutely. Great to be here.
Hello, Max. Welcome aboard. Where are you calling in from today?
Well, I would be calling in from Belgium usually. That's where I call home. But actually today I'm in the beautiful city of Amsterdam. So dialing in from remotely.
All right, very good. Thank you for coming in all the way across the world for us. All right. And joining us also today is Jamie Grabert, President and co-founder of the consultancy group. Jamie's been with us before, so welcome back, Jamie. Where are you calling in from today?
Good morning, Kevin. Thanks for having me. I'm calling in from the San Francisco Bay Area.
Wonderful. All right, very good. Well, welcome aboard, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We should have a great discussion. To start us off, I'd like to point our attention to an article published recently by ZDNet that talks about how Adobe is buying videos to train its new AI tool. And the article asks the question, is it paying enough? And indeed, according to the article, Adobe is paying around $3 a minute for video content to train its text-to-video AI generator, a competitor to Google's Lumiere and OpenAI's Sora. They are doing this by recruiting help from its network of photographers and videographers and purchasing videos that show people engaging in everyday activities like walking and running and using a cell phone, and other videos showing emotions like sadness or excitement. Adobe is also requesting simple videos of human anatomy like feet and ears and hands, which AI notoriously struggles with to depict correctly. The main focus of the article is the rate that Adobe is paying for these videos, which is roughly $3 a minute. And given that creators will likely receive no credit and no licensing or royalties, some are questioning whether Adobe is paying a fair rate. Now, as a content creator myself, I have to question whether this is just another example of how content creators like musicians and writers and visual artists are getting the short end of the stick these days, and why we see such concern among writers and actors and directors in Hollywood with respect to generative content and AI. I'll leave that perhaps for a different discussion, but for our purposes today, the article does shed light on the insatiable need for data to feed and fuel techniques using AI, a subject that we've been talking about on this show. Just a couple of weeks ago, we discussed a New York Times article about how companies like OpenAI and Google and Meta are in a desperate hunt for data for their systems. And my question for you folks today is, all of this speaks to the importance of solid data and lots of it, and high quality information to fuel automation and innovation with AI. What does this insatiable appetite for data mean for organizations in business today? Max, what are your thoughts on the article?
Yeah, I find it really interesting to read, to be honest. It's just, like you said, it's just another example of the absolute necessity for data to continue to grow on this path of discovery. I'm sure the audience already knows, and I definitely know the panel knows, but some of the capabilities that we have, available to us now with generative AI specifically, have come from discovery. This is not something we built. We discovered that these capabilities come from the transformer architectures that we have. But with keeping up the information in terms of pushing more data, pushing more computational power, we're uncovering new things, and we're hoping to find more and more capabilities that they're actually able to do. So that's where definitely this article that highlights that, but it's definitely translatable into the business sphere too, where organizations have already been working a lot on getting their data structured or getting their data available, searchable, retrievable. But now they have to go to that next level, that they actually also have to ensure both accuracy, biases, authenticity, and absolutely the consistency, because we see that there's definitely some work to be done when you want to start implementing AI, both in the variation of generative AI or symbolic AI. There's definitely that need to have the right controls and measures in place to ensure that you don't get into any kind of nasty scenarios, what we've also seen in the news the last couple of months.
Do you feel there's enough attention on this, Max?
I think there's definitely a growing amount of attention. I'm actually really hopeful. I've been watching this market and how it's been moving for the last 2 years now, specifically on the topic of AI. And I think there's a huge amount of attention already, both from government bodies as well as organizations themselves, to think ahead and not just go back to the wild west that we used to have when we first started using cloud computing. Everybody just started doing things, putting their data into the cloud. And it's only now, after several years, that we actually have a huge amount of regulation, InfoSec, and everything else in place that are required both by government bodies and the organizations themselves to secure all of the data and the data of their customers. So I think it's very promising that almost as a society, we're looking ahead and saying, well, we don't want to do that again. We want to do it right this time. And I think there's definitely an amount of realization, but there's still a lot of work to do to actually make it happen. So I'm hopeful, but there's still a lot of work to do.
Now, Eamon, you're a customer engineering leader at Google, formerly with Microsoft. So you have experience helping organizations navigate these waters. From your perspective, how might organizations leverage the data that they have already in fueling their systems and their digital process improvement?
Yeah, it's a great question, right? So one of the things that I've experienced in the enterprise world is you think there's enough data in the internet that is publicly facing. So these Adobe buying video clips or pictures to train their models. The reasons they're doing that is because there is only a finite number of publicly available content. 99% of the enterprises in the world today that have digitized have amazing amount of data that is not shared for many reasons. First, proprietary information, for compliance, for regulatory, or just the fact that they want to keep their secret sauce to themselves. Now, if you're a business and the enterprise, so let's say you want to be a better a tractor maker for farming, that information gathered and stored may be proprietary in the nature that you would use to make a better tractor that's more efficient using AI or some kind of digitization that you cannot have your competition figure out if it was publicly available. So when you think of these companies and enterprises, they're gravitating towards creating their own models. And the common catalyst that I'm coming across is that when you create these models, you need high amount of compute, either be GPUs or CPUs, to create these models and get trained against your own personal data. So all these organizations and enterprises are looking for a level of complexity mitigation by using public-facing data to say, hey, look, if a sky looks like a sky, that must be a sky. But now let me take that picture of the sky that maybe Adobe has trained against their model, and I take that model, tune that model for my purposes, and then use the pictures of the skies that I have. Maybe I'm in weather, maybe I'm in meteorology, whatever it is, that proprietary information now becomes their secret sauce to do something differently and better. So enterprises, where I operate a lot on right now, are trying to get the proof done by these publicly facing organizations. So all these open AI models that have been brought forward, Gen AI, like all these cool stuff, creating cartoons and graphics and sunset pictures, whatever it is essentially helping the enterprise say, hey, you know what? If they can do it, we can do it with our own data to be very niche and very customized for the purpose we need. Think of autonomous vehicle driving, right? All those training that you need to have an autonomous vehicle operating on a public street is very tuned to the geography they are in. In the US, streets are longer, bigger, wider. In Europe, they're smaller, narrower. Even Asian countries, even complex with a lot of foot traffic. So if you think of all these models that have been trained are very specific to those areas, and enterprises have a big amount of data. And one of the ways to look at this is from think of the fact that pharmas, right? There's 8 billion humans in the world. So let's say if you cure a disease and you only sample it against a Caucasian population in the western side of the hemisphere, it may not work for the rest of the world because they're genetically different. So when you think about those models have to be trained against all the data, well, you have to go get the data. Either you have it yourself or you're going to go buy it from other places that have it. And so the model training and efficiency of model training is where the secret is becoming real. Like companies like Google, Microsoft, AWS, Meta, all are creating models that are efficient so you can have better compute power to make it better and efficient and quicker, so that these enterprises can now use it as a commodity and do their own things that they need and not make a lot of investments. So I'm excited about it, but at the same time, it's only as good as the data there. And if the data is held by private corporations and not shared, you're not going to get something that's going to be ubiquitously useful in the world that makes even the bias go away.
Now, Jamie, I mentioned when introducing this article that Adobe is paying roughly about $3. What is it? $3 a minute for this video content. Is that enough? Are content creators being shortchanged? And then beyond that, who owns the content that is captured or found and fed and regurgitated by AI? Jamie, what are your thoughts on the article?
That's a great question. And that's something that, in marketing, we deal with a lot, as far as the NIL deals, the name, image, and likeness deals. And that's one of the things that last fall, the writers guilds, and the actors and actresses were fighting for is like, hey, if you're going to use our image, our voice, we need to be compensated for it. That being said, if any of us took the time to read the information in the policies that how these different apps and things are going to use our data, we would know that we're basically giving it to them anyway. So I think that the fact that they're paying something is good. The rights, yeah, would it be nice to retain those? Yes, of course. But again, be careful what you're doing because those things can be negotiated essentially in most cases. Now, a lot of times, there's a lot of image services, Shutterstock, Adobe being one as well, that buy images, buy video, and have all along, and paid by the user or the number of times it was viewed or whatever their pricing model, and you agree to those terms. So I think, there's got to be, I think we're in the infancy of a lot of these things, and we're going to have to continue to see that evolve. But to tie it back into AI, where it's important is, the quality of the images that we receive is only going to be as good as the quality of the images and the videos that we input, right? Garbage in, garbage out, and vice versa. So I think that having those images and the fact that Adobe and some of these services are willing to pay for them is a good sign that the market is like, okay, we know that we have to have this quality content. We're willing to pay to get that. How, when, and where it's used, is going to be, okay, is this going to be something that is open to everyone to purchase? Is this going to be something that, okay, it's going to be a one-time use or only a certain company or business? I think a lot of those things are still up in the air. And I think those are things that, as a society, we need to, figure out how we're going to move forward and make sure that what we're putting out or what the inputs are quality and real, so that we get that in return.
Well, it's an interesting article, and for the folks with us today, if you'd like to read that article, there is a link here in the chat feature. Adobe is buying videos to train its new AI tool. Is it paying enough? Check it out. Let us know what you think about the article and the impact of the insatiable need for data to train AI systems from some of the biggest companies in the world today. All right, let's move along to our discussion points and talking about using AI to help process automation reach peak efficiency. Folks, our first discussion point today are future trends in AI and automation. Eamon, what are your thoughts about the future? How is AI and automation being used today that is really making a difference today?
Yeah, absolutely. So I speculate a lot of technology future casting in the way of what it means for us. Like let's take a real big leap of faith here. Let's say we want to colonize Mars. At Mars, the radio signal takes about 20 minutes to reach Earth. So anything you're going to do on the rover or whatever that it's automatically running on that surface is going to be 20 minutes behind you. And if you fail to correct or adjust, then you may have a colossal mistake to deal with. So if you think of automation AI, at the edge is what we're thinking about. You have to have capability to automate tasks and have the intelligence at that level to correct itself in the event there is a correction required. So if you think of that rover on Mars, it's going around, it sees a boulder. Instead of having a human operator sitting at NASA, maybe in Houston, saying, hey, let's go around the boulder, you want that autonomous robot to be able to say, that's a boulder, I need to go around it. Can I go right? Can I go left? Should I go over it? That level of automation and AI is becoming necessary, not only for that rover on Mars, but also autonomous vehicles, trains, planes, you name it, here on the surface of Earth. And the same way, there's a lot of tasks that you want to do in the context of procedural automation. For example, if you want to file your taxes, if you were to use a forms recognizer to read your W-2 that gets into the tax system here in the US and then create some kind of automation that says these are your deductions, these are your exceptions, whatever it is. In the past, you had a tax accountant, maybe even an IRS auditor looking through those. If you automate those tasks, it's faster, quicker, and more resilient in the way of error checking, right? So that is becoming the trend. And there's two schools of thought. Some people think that you're doing it for the purpose of doing it, and some people are doing it for the purpose of automating it for the purpose of simplicity and error correction. So it is the way of the future. We have automated over the last 100 years of industrial capability in factories and shipping and whatnot. So it is becoming now digitized and is coming into the computer system and enabling us to automate things that in the past would require humans to do.
Now, Max, you're Senior Director of AI Strategy for AbbVie. From your point of view, where are the future trends in AI and automation? What are the applications that you feel will disrupt operations today and in the next few years, the next 5 years or so?
So personally, I do want to say that AI has been around for much longer than a lot of people realize, right? So I think that's a very important fact. The thing is that right now, because it's been given into the hands of the masses almost, everybody's been able to touch it, everybody's been able to play with it, due to the advent of generative AI, there's now so much more awareness about the possibilities that it actually offers. So I think both today, we're already seeing that customers are looking to how they can leverage the newer technologies like Gen AI into their use cases and actually try to fix use cases that they couldn't do before because the capabilities were just not there. That being said, even at AbbVie, we're using the best of both worlds to actually apply it in a way that it can help the business today and into the future. A practical example of that, Eamon mentioned taxes in the US. We worked together with one of the biggest tax companies in the US to do exactly that. When you file your taxes, we extract all of the information from that document automatically, so nobody has to worry about that. And we have a 99% straight-through processing rate of that information just flowing freely from one system to the next, to the government, and doing all of the due diligence. So it's the beauty of those kind of applications of AI, which makes the combination of both what we call small language models, symbolic AI, both generative AI, large language models, all of it combined into the right platform, into the right mix as a complete tool set that you actually need. That is what I think the market is definitely moving towards. More and more realization that this hype cycle that we just went through, although it's actually quite a positive one, we've skipped the froth of disillusionment, in my opinion. But nonetheless, it's a combination of tools that you actually need to apply all of these capabilities into an enterprise space. And there's great examples of what you can already do today that have a huge impact on both organizations and people's lives and their customers and their experience.
Now, Jamie, you've been with us before, and we've talked about using AI for marketing automation and improving customer experience. These are very important KPIs for most organizations. But I get the sense from some people that I talk to that while there is recognition that AI, as Max has said, has been around for a while, and certainly everyone's talking about the use of generative AI today, for example. But there is some skepticism about the real impact on real business moving forward from some. Jamie, from your point of view, what is the cost of doing nothing when it comes to AI and automation?
I think they're pretty substantial at this point. I mean, not even speaking from a marketing standpoint, but operationally speaking. Right now we're dealing with a lot of organizations, for example, are dealing with mass layoffs. So you have people doing 2 to 3 additional jobs maybe that they weren't doing before. And so there's tasks that you can automate. Some of it is through the chatbots or through customer service. Yes, absolutely. But other things are supply chain issues, having and data entry, that takes time and it takes manpower for some. So if you have systems that are automated that talk to each other or can communicate like that, that saves you a lot of time and money. It saves you time and error because if people are working overtime, there's likely to be more errors made because they're tired. There's buying, making sure that you have the quantities that you need. Through the supply chain, making sure that all of those types of things stay on task and on track. I think that right now we're in a time where AI is not perfect. Is it ever going to be? Probably not. But I think we're living in a time where we're going to set what those rails are. And to Max's point, I know AI has been around for a long time, but as far as how most businesses are implementing it, and specifically let's say small to medium businesses, I think it can be very impactful for their growth trajectory and keep a larger corporation from becoming stagnant. We see that, a lot of large companies are slow to interact with things or slow to implement new things. And I think that's going to be critical. So I think implementing AI now, even if it's small and you're kind of incrementally adding it, I think it's important because, even from a competitive set, your competitors are probably already starting to do so, and you don't want to be, last to do so because you're going to lose market share. You're going to potentially lose out on supply chain, and eventually you might even lose out on your qualified staff.
Well, Jamie, you are leading us right to our next discussion point, and that is real life examples of how intelligent automation can streamline critical processes. Jamie, you mentioned implementing AI and automation in small pieces where it matters. From your perspective, what enterprise processes are ripe for improvement using intelligent automation, and what should we do about it?
Well, from my aspect, communications. It's kind of like all of the messaging, whether it be internal or external, is important, and how you communicate, how to use the things. So for me, communications is an absolute, and it ties back into so many things. It helps sales, it helps marketing, it helps data analysis. And in a world where today, for example, real world example here, we have a client who had a meeting with his sales staff yesterday, and of their biggest sales recently have all come from demand generation activity, which is all automated. It's all of it. The emails, a lot of the things were done through AI channels, or some type of of machine generated content. So what we're seeing is that marketing is truly assisting sales, but also it means those channels have to talk, so marketing is able to close the loop, marketing and sales. So you have two channels right there. I think we're tearing down some silos, which is important, but you have two silos right there that are working together, which actually and ultimately impact operations, because if everything talks, if marketing is able to generate more sales, you're able to see the ROI and the attribution more clearly. That's going to be important, and it kind of helps with forecasting and predictive modeling. So all of these things start to become interconnected when you really look at it.
All right. Now, Max, our listeners and viewers come from all kinds of industries: insurance, manufacturing, government operations, high tech. From your point of view, what enterprise processes are ripe for improvement? And can you give us some examples of organizations that you feel have been successful in using intelligent automation? What did they do, and what were the results?
Yeah, I'd love to. So I think there's two types of processes. If we take it like a 10,000-foot view, there's two types of processes that you can think of. There's the operational side, like Jamie already mentioned a couple of ones, but you can even get more operational to the level that we're talking about: the finance department, the legal department, where you automate end-to-end procure to pay, where you do accounts payable, accounts receivable. All that is actually something that is very easy to do at any level of type of organization, whether that's an enterprise today or that is actually a small, medium enterprise as well. And then there's the other category, which is much more impactful, that comes to the point where you're really interacting with the end customer. And I think that now also is becoming more and more into view, because those used to be very sensitive projects that used to be something that is usually quite costly because it takes a lot of effort. You want to get it just right, right? So if you do something back office, there's people that you still have on staff that will continue to help and move that process along. But if you're directly touching the customer with automations, then that is something that you want to get absolutely right. So I think that's really important, that those are two categories that are definitely existing. Now, also, in terms of some real world examples, one of my favorite examples from quite recently, I don't know if you guys know about the UK actually doing Brexit, leaving Europe, but that has come into effect and actually created a lot of overhead, really, in terms of customs clearance, all of the documentation that has to happen, and just the process in itself has become a lot more complex. Now we have this customer company that actually works with fast-moving consumer goods, in this case, quite delicious pastries. And thanks to leveraging artificial intelligence, specifically artificial intelligence that was built purposefully for the automation of document-driven processes, like which customs clearance is. There's about 159 touch points with documents to get something shipped from A to B, which is a staggering number if you think about it. But in their case, they were able to automate up to 90% of that just by
Oh, did we lose Max? We may have lost Max. Okay. All right. Well, I'll all right. Very good. We'll continue on and hope Max can rejoin us. But Eamon, I want to move to you now. We've been talking about real life examples of using intelligent automation. Where can they be applied today? Are there examples of processes that should not be automated? And if so, why not?
There are several things that should not be automated, and this comes down to the core testament of safety for humans. Think about it that way, right? If anything that can impact a life, saved or not saved, is where you should think about the second set of eyes of automation. There are many different ways to look at it, this from perspective of security, implementation of security, or otherwise. So I'm going to use something that I recently had done, is surgery on my eye for cataracts. It took 20 seconds per eye. 20 years ago would have taken like a whole day's worth of operation to do that. But what happened is automation, AI, generative AI itself, they used all these lasers and machine learning and everything to figure out how quickly that cataract surgery would take and get done. But there was a doctor that had to be licensed, but also present before that robot went and did the things to my eye. And that last bit is the requirement that you cannot have, a storefront laser surgery system where you just go sit in a chair and get your eyes done without any presence of humans or any other kind of oversight. So there are things that you want to predictably say if it has safety involved where lives can be saved or lost, you have to not automate the last mile of that decision making today. Now, there might be in the future where the computers can get so intelligently smart, sentient AI might come around where that may not be necessary, but right now you cannot do that decision making because of that impact that humans generally are unpredictable as are many creatures. Here's an example of automation in that context, right? If you have an autonomous car and you're driving down a freeway, especially here in the US, there are animals that will randomly cross the freeway, like deer or otherwise. That deer is unpredictable as an organic entity. So just because your autonomous car sees a deer and it says, I'm going to swerve left, and what if the deer decides to turn around and go the other direction, which a deer is completely entitled to do because they do whatever they want. If your car swerves the wrong direction, you're going to impact the deer. Even if the car said, there's a deer, obstruction, move away, right? That decision making may sometimes require a human because you as a human can predictably notice that unpredictable behavior of that creature or human being or whatever it is, right? That unpredictability is something that you cannot automate out today in today's technology in 2024, but it may be something that can be getting very close to that decision making. So for example, aviation, by autopilot and planes have been around for almost 40 years. Pilots are still necessary because that last bit of decision making may come down to that human person, but planes can take off and land automatically today. I mean, drones have proven that. So depending on the safety of the humans that are going to be encompassing that decision making and automation, you want to not automate things like that today in today's culture and capability.
All right, very good. This is Digital Transformation Talk, and we are here talking about using AI to help process automation reach peak efficiency. We're here with Ayman Hussein, Customer Engineering Leader at Google, Max Vermeer, Senior Director of AI Strategy at Abby, and Jamie Graybert, President and Co-founder of the Consultancy Group. If you have a question or a comment for our panel today, please enter them into the chat feature. We'll attempt to get some of them into the flow of the show, and we'll have a few minutes here at the end also for your comments and questions. All right, everyone, let's move along in the time that we have left to our final discussion point today, and that is how to identify the risks and obstacles in the adoption of AI in process automation. And Jamie, I'd like to ask you, what risks should we consider that we may not be considering? We talk about AI algorithms and hallucinations and so forth, but from your perspective, what are the risks that we should be considering that we may not have, that we may have overlooked?
I think, well, I think back to Ayman's point too, I think a lot of it is the human aspect of some things. I think there are processes that some people try to automate that maybe shouldn't. One of them being HR. I think there are a lot of good candidates that are kicked out just simply because the AI that's reading their resume doesn't maybe land on the right desk, or something like that. I think there's a lot of automation, especially when you're involving people and emotion. I think those things should still be handled by humans. I still believe that there are a lot of concerns about the quality and the cleanliness of data. I was working on a data report yesterday and had some issues just simply because of structure. And it wasn't a data set of mine, it was a data set of a client's, but it had to be cleaned. And are those clean rooms really clean? So I think that's still a risk, is the quality of the data. And just like with any other technology, is it being used properly? Are people using it ethically and notifying others when they're using it? I think that's going to be an important thing moving forward. It would not surprise me at all to see that, especially with rules like GDPR and things like the privacy laws changing here in California, that even governments are requiring us to disclose when and if we use any AI in our processes and where and how. So I think there's just a lot of unknowns, and I think that's kind of the part that is, is for me the riskiest.
All right. Well, I want to ask about hallucinations. And Max, perhaps you can help me. In AI, hallucinations refer to an erroneous or incorrect output generated uh, because of various types of data that it may ingest to be trained, and they can manifest in incorrect text generation, misinterpretations, and generally erroneous predictions. So what about hallucinations? What should we know about them, and how do we avoid them in our systems and solutions?
Yeah, so hallucinations is something that you mostly get when you're working specifically with generative AI. If you look at other categories of artificial intelligence, such as machine learning, natural language processing, those are all discriminative. So those actually figure out what exactly they're supposed to hone in on. They're not generating new content, which is very different. So that's where you get the hallucinations from. So nonetheless, in certain use cases, already stuff that we are working on with our customers today is that we're combining both technologies. One is discriminative that will give you the right piece of data that you can then pass along to the generative part, which will actually help it compile its answer by blocking off a certain amount of knowledge, giving it the right information that it needs to use. So there's less chance of actually getting those hallucinations. A very popular technique that's being used for that, Eamon already talked about training your own model. There's another option to it, which has, kind of the best of both worlds, in my opinion, which is retrieval augmented generation, where you actually feed your company data into the large language model for it to reason about, for it to think about, for it to generate new text from within the confines, within the box, basically, of your organization and its particular purpose. So there's many different ways that you can go about it, depending on the type of use case that you're looking at. It's really important to figure out what is the right fit for me. Now, I do want to come back to your earlier question to Jamie, actually, if you don't mind, because you asked what are one of the definite things that people are not thinking about today when they're starting to look at implementing AI in general, or even just intelligent automation and automation. I think there's definitely a risk that companies are at right now that they don't really understand how their processes work. I've had time and time again where, if you ask a simple question, explain this, how this goes, you get 5 to 10 steps that somebody explains to you, this is how the process works. When you then actually apply technology to go and look at all of the data that's available within the organization, that Jamie pointed out correctly, is never clean, it's always messy. You start to figure out, and you can actually reconstitute the process from that. And then you see that, okay, in the perfect world, your process is 5 to 10 steps. But in 90% of the cases, it's a hell of a lot more. And that's exactly that kind of black void that a lot of organizations are not aware about, that they have to take care of first to understand the process. So then you can identify how the best way it is to actually automate it, and whether that's an AI or something else, that is the right decision that you have to make once you fully understand how your actual organization is running itself.
All right, folks, we are getting some questions from our audience today. And Eamon, I'm hoping you can help me out with this question that is coming from Boris. Boris, thank you so much for your question today. Boris is asking, in your opinion, how is AI automation reshaping traditional industries, and what are some potential implications for the workforce? Eamon, can you help us out?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to use two examples on the context of it. First of all, let's talk about photography, right? In my early days, when I was in high school, I used to do photography. I used to go take pictures. I used to go to a dark room. I used to use chemicals and process the film and then print it and use stop and fix and all that. It was fun. With digital photography, that part of lab work has gone away. But guess what? You still need a photographer. You still need to know what a sun looks like, what a landscape looks like, a human looks like when you're taking these pictures, right? So when you do that context, some jobs are eliminated by the automation and digitization of the work behind the scenes, right? But the photographer still is essentially necessary because you still have to compose, you still have to be artistic in nature and flair. You're using a digital camera, using your smartphone right now that takes care of it, all the digitization and the editing as well, right? So you have really maximized AI in that context, which has created content creators. And that's why Adobe is wanting to buy supply all these pictures, and if everybody's able to provide content at a high speed and velocity without having to compromise quality and whatnot. So that's one of the things. So what AI is going to do is going to remove some work in the workforce. So you have to stay ahead of it. You still have to stay ahead of the curve. You have to get better at it. You have to train yourself, learn a few things differently. Some roles will disappear, and it has happened in automation in industry, like the manufacturing line or the automation of robotic assembly lines. These came as humans were replaced with the efficiency of that kind. So some things will go away with that automation. One of the things that you have to keep in mind with this automation is the fact that the industry can be more responsive. So when you think about what this means, and I use a recent example in the context of our recent events, a ship goes sideways in the Suez Canal and you have a supply chain problem. Why? Because the ship blocks the canal, the ships are piled up behind it, a lot of products, commodities that are behind it. So what AI is going to make you do better with is have these what if scenarios and questions answered in an efficient way that gives you the supply chain optimization that you need, or just decision making optimization you want. For example, if there's a hurricane barreling down in Houston, will there be an impact on oil and gas? Well, that could be, because it's a terminal for export of oil and gas. If there's a hurricane, they may shut it down. People may not go to work. You might actually have a supply chain problem sooner than later. Manufacturing, global events, worldwide events, whatever it is. So what AI is going to help you do is make you a better decision maker using the data that's available, or you're adding your own personalized data into it to make those decisions that will help eventually things sustainable, resilient, reduce waste, and all of that will come with it. But some roles will disappear. But does not mean it's going to completely replace. You can skill up, and that's one of the things I encourage everybody: skill up, because AI requires people. It's not something that you can just do without. Some roles will never come back. Like think of the elevator context. There was a time there was a person in the elevator that would take you to different floors. Now you have buttons. Yeah, some jobs will just disappear with automation and digitization. Right. So that's the way to think about it. But yes, decision making and better decision making is what AI is going to help us do collectively in the world.
All right. Now, Max, maybe you can help us with this next question coming in from Greta. And Greta, thank you for your question today. Greta is asking, with the advancement of AI and machine learning, how do you see OCR evolving in the near future? OCR is optical character recognition technology that we've been using for years in mail processing and other automated processes. So, Max, where do you see OCR evolving in the near future?
Yeah, I think with the advent and definitely a lot of the additional computational power that we have, even within that process, something AI that computer vision that we've already been using for many, many years, like you said, we can now use much more, I would say, capable techniques that used to actually be impossible simply because of the computational power that you would need. For example, already today, Abby is a provider of OCR technology, amongst other things. We're using language models to actually resolve ambiguity. So that decision making that Eamon was talking about, that's exactly one of the ways that we use it in our technology today, so that you can get those straight-through processing rates that customers, companies are looking for. Like I talked about the tax forms, or with the FDA, for example, in the US. Those are processes that require high accuracy, that you cannot have any kind of ambiguity. So those are the kind of things that definitely OCR still plays a huge part in. And one other thing is that at the start of this conversation, we talked about the fact that Adobe is buying content, it is buying information, it is buying data. And to Eamon's point, he's absolutely right. There's treasure troves of information inside of organizations, but still it is not in the right format. It is often digitized, but it's actually not accessible. It's definitely not accessible in a way that you can easily identify the right data points from all of those documents, because businesses are very document driven. 90% of the processes that come along in a business are attached to documents itself. So I think that is also where actually we see a resurgence of OCR necessity, of being able to transform all of that prized possession of organizations, which is inside of their documents, that now they want to have structured, they want to have organized, they want to make it available, so you can then take the next steps when you get to the point that you've done all the automation, you understand your process, you have data available, it's clean, it's accessible, and then you can start talking about, okay, now we're going to start leveraging generative AI capabilities at the right point in time for the right use cases. So I think it's important, even though it's a technology that has been around for many, many years, has evolved throughout the years, is continuously evolving now, but it's increased importance again, because exactly about the point, the documents, that's where the data is that organizations are looking for.
All right, very good. We are here today with Max Vermeer, Senior Director of AI Strategy at Abby, Ayman Hussein, Customer Engineer Leader at Google, and Jamie Graebert, President and Co-founder of the consultancy group. Folks, we are running short of time. In the time that we have remaining, I'm wondering if each of you could please provide us with one quick action item that our viewers can use to take advantage of your ideas and advice. Jamie, do you have an action item for us today?
Yeah, I think I think you have to have a strategy for how you're going to implement AI, no matter, what department you start with. If you're not already, if you are, I think then it becomes a matter of making sure that all of your different departments, your different data sets are structured the same, clean, and that you're able to, that everybody is able to access it so that everybody can make better decisions for the organization.
All right, Jamie, thank you so much for being with us again on the show today. Ayman, how about you? Do you have an action item for us?
I do. Please learn it. It's easy to learn it. Even if you don't know what AI is, go to one of the popular AI systems like ChatGPT and ask, what is AI? It'll teach you stuff. It is democratizing learning. If you don't know what it is, if you're fearful of it, go out there and learn it. It's free almost everywhere, even from the big brands like Microsoft and Google. Go learn it. Make your skill better. This is no different than driving a car. When there was horses, now you have cars. You want that skill. You want to get it, even if that's not your core comfort. Learn it because it is evolving. If you think of grandparents and the internet, Facebook, there was a time they didn't have it, then they learned it and they became the champions of it. You want to be the champion of it, learn it, figure out how it fits in your life. So do not hesitate, learn it. You don't have to have a structured curriculum, don't have to go to college or an education certifications. You can do it on your own if you have access to the internet and a computer or a device that gets you there.
All right, Ayman, thank you also for being with us today. And finally, Max Vermeer. Max, do you have an action item for us today?
Yeah, and I think it's a follow-up to what Ayman just said, about learn it. I think it's also equally important to connect with people that are very active in this space. That's also how I stay on top of all of the great things that are happening in the artificial intelligence world. And one of the ways is also that there's a lot of companies, like Ayman said, that are actually freely offering you access to knowledge and information. So one of the ways that we're doing that is we're creating an AI summit in London next month on the 15th of May. And we're also sharing information about this particular topic and practical uses of it through the AI Pulse podcast that we're hosting too. So there's so much information available about it. Go learn, go listen. And there's both different ways that you can go deep dive into technical, but there's also companies that are offering it at a level that is just easy to understand, easy to consume. So that would be my action point. Go check it out.
All right, very good. Max, Jamie, Ayman, thank you so much for your comments today. What a great panel. Your perspective and advice were spot on, and I hope that we'll get a chance to talk again soon. And to everyone joining us today, thank you too. Join us again next week on April 30th, when I have another great panel of guests discussing the topic of driving retail innovation through digital transformation. It should be another great discussion, so join us next week. And in the meantime, if you'd like to find me, you can do so on LinkedIn. I'm happy to connect there. Check me out. I'm Kevin Crane, and check out my weekly audio podcast, the Digital Transformation Podcast. But for now, that'll do it for this episode of Digital Transformation Talk. And until next time, I'm Kevin Crane. Thanks for watching.